Hey dancers, time for activity 6, our cat container. Go ahead and get your big Ziploc bag that says activity 6 cat container and let's talk. We've got several options for how to do this activity today. Here are all the materials you're going to need for today's activity. You should have a really long piece of rope, 6 different wooden shapes, 1 pink button, a shorter string of embroidery floss. You'll need your tacky glue, permanent marker, and a pair of scissors. You may also want some kind of recycled plastic or metal container like a can or a yogurt jar or something like that. We'll talk more about that in a second. Start by unraveling your string a little bit. I'm going to show you 2 different options for how you can make this cat container. It's up to you to choose which way you'd like to make this cat container for yourself. The first option does not involve any type of recycled container. This is just building a freestanding cat container. We're going to start by creating a base for our container by slowly wrapping the rope in a tight coil. You'll need your glue handy in one hand because as we're wrapping the coil, we're going to put a line of glue around and stick it down. This may get a little messy. You see I have some glue that's seeping out already. So it might be a good idea to put down some recycled paper or a tablecloth while you're doing this so you don't get your surface too messy. Keep going like this until you make a base that's exactly the size of the container that you want to have. Once you've made your coil as wide as you want your container to be, we're going to start building up the side edges of our container. Now don't worry if you've got glue seeping out all over on yours like I do on mine. Remember, that's all going to dry clear, so it's okay if it's sticking out right now. We're going to do the same kind of thing, except we'll be piling the rope up on top. So let me show you how that's going to work. Instead of putting glue down here in between the rope, I'm going to start putting it on top of the very outside edge of my rope. Now, same thing as I did for the bottom, I'm going to keep going up and around, up and around, up and around, all the way up high until I get my container as big as I want to be. It's okay if you don't use all the rope. If you make your container as tall as you want to and you still have some leftover rope, we're just going to snip it off with our scissors. Keep going just like this until you make your container as tall as you want it to be. Wow, look at how tall that's gotten just from wrapping it around. Now you see I'm almost out of rope, but before I'm all totally done, we're going to use this rope to make some actual cat ears. So once you've been holding your rope in place for a while and the glue's starting to dry, we're going to be making some little cat ears by just creating a little bump like a cat ear, gluing it down in between where your 2 cat ears are going to be. Then glue it down in between where the 2 ears are going to be. Make 1 more ear and same thing on the other side. Now the trickiest part about this is definitely to keep the ears standing up while the glue is drying. So I've got a couple of tips for you. You could use something like a binder clip or a chip clip like you might use to hold a chip bag closed and put that on. I'm putting mine in between the 2 ears while you're waiting for it to dry. That'll help hold things in place and allow them to dry exactly where you want them to be. Once you get to the end, take a pair of scissors, if you still have a little bit of rope left over, and snip it off. Then just make sure you've got enough glue under the tail end of your rope so that it doesn't come undone easily. I'm gonna put a nice big dot of glue there and really pinch it together. There we go. Now, obviously this is still drying. We still see lots of white glue in between. So I'm gonna put this to the side and show you another option for how to make this kind of cat container. If you want something to build your container around, I suggest using something like a yogurt cup, sour cream container, a can from some kind of canned goods, or even a water bottle would work. I'm gonna use this yogurt container because it's what I was able to find in my recycling bin. I've got the same length rope that I had for the other one. All of your pieces of rope are about the same length, so you could just as easily do this version as the first version. We're gonna start this the same way we started the other one, by coiling it, gluing between the coils, and keep going. But this time, I just have to make sure that my coil is as big as the bottom of the container that I'm using. So start by doing that, just like we did for the first one. Awesome, I've finished my coil. My coil is now the same size, just actually a little bit bigger than the base of my yogurt cup. So I want my yogurt cup to actually stay inside my container at all times. So I'm actually gonna put a little bit of glue on the bottom and stick it to the coil so that it stays in place. This will also keep the yogurt container from wiggling around while I try to glue the rest of the rope up and around the sides. If you're gluing your container to your coil, press and hold it for a little bit. Give it some time to dry so that it's not wiggling around when you're trying to glue the rest of your rope up and around the sides of it. I've given mine some time to dry, so now it's time to continue coiling my rope up the side of the yogurt cup, just like we did before, but this time on an actual object. I'm almost done wrapping. You see I have a little over a foot that's left, enough to make my cat ears and enough to probably have to snip off a little bit. Now before I do that, obviously this didn't go as high as my container went. So if you're in the same situation, before you make your cat ears, you're gonna wanna cut down your plastic container. You may need some help from a grown-up on this part, especially if you have pretty thick plastic. So ask for some help if you don't think you're gonna be able to do it on your own. All right, same thing as last time. Let's make our cat ears. Again, we're gonna push our cat ears up just like this to make a little bump for the ear. Glue down a little bit. Do the same thing on this side. And again, I'm gonna use some little binder clips just to hold these pieces in place so that my cat ears glue exactly where I want them to. Just stick my binder clips on here to hold these two parts in place while it dries. And I've got a little bit left over, so let me go ahead and snip that off. Now don't get rid of those parts yet because you may want them for one final step. All right, mine are almost dry. You can still see a couple little white spots where they're not quite completely dry, but I wanna go ahead and show you the next step. Next, we're gonna put some eyes, nose, whiskers, and maybe even a tail on our containers. So let me show you what that's gonna look like. Grab your little wooden pieces. You'll see that there's 3 different sets. Some large oval eyes, small oval eyes, and medium-sized round eyes. Pick a set that you want for your cat. I'm gonna use the round eyes for mine. Take your permanent marker and draw some pupils onto your eyes. This is a place where you can really give your cat some character. Decide what you want your cat to look like and use your permanent marker to draw on the pupils of the eyes. Before I put these pieces onto my cat container, I'm gonna go ahead and line them up on the table exactly how I want them to be. So I've got some eyes, and I've got my little pink nose. And finally, you've got this embroidery floss, this really thin, almost yarn-like material that you can use to make some whiskers for your kitty cat. Awesome. Okay, so take your glue, Flip it over, flip your container over to the side where your ears are, and go ahead and put glue where you want your eyes, nose, and whiskers to be and stick them on. And then we've got one final step left. Awesome, my glue is mostly dried, so it's turning clear already. And lastly, if you have any rope left and you want to use it, you could totally make a cute little tail for your cat container. All you need to do is glue one end of the tail onto the back side and let it curve around the front like a little tail. And there we have it, adorable cat containers. You could use them for anything, really. Maybe school supplies, art supplies, jewelry, scrunchies, little mini toys, Legos, anything you can think of. Hope you had fun making these containers.